Hey there, ProChurch Media community, this is Jason again, and in this super fun tutorial we're going to look at how to create a fake 3D head rig inside of After Effects using only shapes and some scripts and some expressions and things like that. Just try to get as much expressiveness out of a very simple emoji face as possible. To pull this off, we're going to be using a script from aescripts.com called Joysticks and Sliders. This is especially useful if you do a lot of character animation, but you can use it for a ton of other stuff as well, but really useful for character animation. It's one of those scripts where at first glance it's like, so what does this do? But once you finally get the hang of it and you get that aha moment, then it suddenly opens up a whole new world of different things you can do. So it's basically pose-based rigging for After Effects. We will see how that works as we go along. We're also going to be using another script called Auto Crop. You can get this one at Name Your Own Price. Be sure to throw the developer a couple bucks if you want to pick it up. It's great for cropping a pre-comp down to the actual pixels of what's inside that pre-comp. We will look at that more as we get into After Effects. So let's jump into this and start creating our emoji. Alright, so I'm going to start with a new composition here, just about 5 seconds long, 1080 by 1080. Let's just make a quick background here. Let's make it that blue color that we had from the previous one. Something like that'll work. I don't need a stroke. That'll work. Okay, so now let's draw an ellipse here. This will be kind of our character base. And I'm just going to paste in a yellow color I already have. That'll be good. Let's add a stroke to it. Make sure it's the same color as the inside. And I think something like that will work. And so let's center up the anchor point. Let's call this base. Let's call this background and lock it off. And we're good to go. Okay, so with this guy, I basically have some different variations in the colors. Just to kind of give it a little bit of depth and movement, so we're going to do that. So I'm just going to duplicate this base and get rid of the stroke here, I think, and change the color to like a lighter yellow, something like that. And then I'm going to, let's call this, shadow isn't the right word, but let's just call it shadow. Let's call this base matte as we duplicate it, put it above the shadow, and we're going to be getting rid of the stroke here. And then using this as a matte for the shadow, so we just want to add the alpha matte track matte. So now I can offset this like so, and it's always going to stay within that circle. So something like that will probably work. That looks good. So now I'm going to duplicate this again. Let's call this mid-light. We have the same matte. We can make this a little bit lighter yellow. Maybe something like so, and we'll pull this up over there. That might be too much. So let's maybe back it down just a bit. That looks pretty good. I just want a little bit of variation, and I think that will work. Okay, and then finally, let's duplicate this one more time, and we'll call this highlight. And this one I want to kind of just bring really small like that. This is going to be quite a bit lighter like that. And I might go into the contents, duplicate that ellipse, pull it down over here, just bring it down a little bit. And that looks pretty good. Okay, so I think we can live with that, and we can always tweak it later if we need to, but I think that'll work. Okay, so now with our emoji guy, we also have some eyes and a mouth. So let's go ahead and make that mouth. So I'm just going to start with an ellipse, make it a white color. Just kind of draw a circle here. Go into the contents, ellipse path, right click on it, convert to Bezier path. Get rid of this right here. Let's just zoom in and just drag these points down, even these out. This would be easier to do in Illustrator, but I can do it quicker right now in After Effects. So we got that. We have our mouth. Looks good. Might just center up that anchor point, and we're good. Maybe pull it up just a bit. All right, so let's call this mouth. And then we need some eyes. So we just need to get another ellipse. Just draw an eye right here, like that, and that looks good. Let's call this eye. And then center up that anchor point. I'm going to duplicate this, call this pupil. We need to make this black, or at least a very darker color. Scale it down, zoom in, that looks good. Inside of this pupil, I think I'm going to duplicate that ellipse. Scale this down, kind of get that kind of anime eye highlight going on, so we'll go with some white there. Maybe make this one a little bit smaller. We have our nice highlights, and so we have our eye. That looks good. Okay, so now what we want to do, I guess we would need an eyebrow, so let's get a rectangle tool, and let's just draw kind of a rectangle here. I think I want to make it the same color as this outline back here. I'm going to go into the rectangle path, just crank up the roundness, just to get the rounded edges there. I think that looks pretty good. And I'm just going to leave this eyebrow here for right now, and we'll deal with the other one later. Let's just call this eyebrow left. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is kind of rig up my eye so I don't have to actually animate two different eyes, because usually with your characters, I mean, you can have the eyes go different ways, like cross-eyed or whatever, but usually the eyes tend to go the same way at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and pre-comp the pupil and the eye together. Let me go ahead and I'm going to make a matte for the pupil first. So I'm going to call this eye matte, and put a track matte for the pupil on the eye. So now the pupil won't go outside of the eye, but I can still move it around. So now I want to pre-comp these together. So I'm going to select all of them, go to pre-compose, and I'll just call this eye. Let's just call it eye emoji, just in case I have another pre-comp like that sitting around there somewhere. Move all attributes into the new composition, hit OK. Now the problem with After Effects, and I don't know why they do this, is it makes the pre-comp the size of the comp that it came from, and so it's this entire thing like this. I mean, you can collapse the transformation to get it down there, but that's just not as much, not as useful as it could be. So this is where we're going to be using that auto crop. So I have this right here, it's called auto crop, and it's called auto crop 2015. It's kind of an older script. But what you do is you just hit auto crop, and it's going to crop it to the, it actually tells you what it's going to do. So you select the pre-comp that you want to crop, and it tells you what the crop is before you do it, and then it says the pixels cropped from the top and the bottom. And so it's basically cropping it to the transparent pixels. So let me just hit auto crop, and it's going to do exactly what I wanted, which is really nice. And so if I go into my pre-comp, you can see it's exactly the size of my eye, which is exactly what I want. Okay, so now what we want to do is we're going to set up our first joysticks and sliders rig. And so joysticks and sliders just sits in your UI like a regular script, and there's a very specific way in which you actually use the joysticks for this part of it. And you basically set 5 different keyframes, 5 different sequential keyframes, and then each of those is a different pose. And then what it does is it creates a joystick that interpolates all the movements between those poses. But it's much easier just to show you how it does it than to tell you. So what I want to do is I'm going to set up a joystick for the pupil. So I want to open up the position for the pupil, set a keyframe on the first frame. So this is basically my origin frame. So you want to start with an origin frame. So that's basically wherever you want it to start from. Then you want to move forward 1 frame, and now you want to set your right extreme position, so basically your right pose. And so let's say I want the eye to maybe go that far and no further, or the pupil that is. So that'll be my right extreme pose, so I have a keyframe set there. You can then use like this origin button to kind of recenter everything to get you back to square one. So then I want to go left, so I'm going to do basically about equidistant there, like that. So that'll be my left extreme pose. Go forward a frame, set another origin. Then I want to go up, and so I'll go up maybe about the same sort of distance, and then forward 1 frame, set that origin again just to center it out, go down about the same distance, and then those are all the keyframes that I need. So I have all of my extremes right there. Okay, so now that I have all those set, I just select my layer here. Sometimes I just select the keyframes just to make sure. Then I want to come to the joystick tools right here and say create new joystick. And I want to give it a name. I'll just call it eye. Or I could call it pupil, that might be better. And I'll just call it eye, I know what it is. And I'll say okay. And so now it creates this guide layer. Let me scale it down a little bit so you can see it. So this is basically just kind of a shape that's set as a guide layer, so it's not going to render out. And then it has a little controller, and you can see as I start to move this controller, it's now interpolating all those different positions in between those extreme poses that I made. So it gives me a ton of flexibility with being able to move this all around. And so it's kind of cool. All right, so I'm going to recenter it. And the really nice thing about how joysticks and sliders works is it lets you, I mean, I could keep this inside of this pre-comp, but that would be pretty tedious because I'd always have to come back inside of this pre-comp to change it. It actually lets me send it to the parented comp that it's nested in. So I'm just going to click on this right here and come to this move joystick to parent comp, which is that emoji 2. And I'll just say to parent. And so now it's going to, you can see it actually added an expression to it, and it's telling it to reference this new thing that it's created inside of here. And so now I have this eye and this eye origin right here. And so I'm just going to label these a different color just so I know what they are. And so now I can, let me go ahead and make this a little bit bigger. So now as I'm controlling this eye control, you can see it's controlling the eye inside of that pre-comp, which is super useful because now I don't have to dig into that pre-comp to change it. And so now all I have to do is duplicate this eye and move it over here. And now it will move both eyes at the same time, which is super helpful. So now I don't have to animate more than I have to, so that is awesome. All right, so now let's deal with this eyebrow. I'm gonna do 2 eyebrows. That might be a little bit big. That looks good. Okay, so I'm gonna duplicate this, move it over here. Let's call this eyebrow right. I'm going to set up some expressions to control both the position and the rotation from one controller. So let's create a new null. I'm going to call this eyebrow control. And I'm going to add a few sliders to it. So go to expression control, slider control. Let's call this eyebrow L position. I'm going to duplicate that, call it eyebrow L rotation. Duplicate that, call it eyebrow R position, and then eyebrow R rotation. And I'll lock this for a second just so it's always there. And then I'm going to come down to these, hit P to open up the position, hold Shift and R to open up rotation. And I'm actually going to separate the dimensions so I only want to basically do the up and down, so just the Y position. So I'm going to alt-click on this and just drag this up to the eyebrow R position slider. For the rotation, do the same for the eyebrow R rotation, eyebrow L position, eyebrow R rotation. And so one problem you can see is that it kind of sucked all my eyebrows up to the very top, and that's just kind of how it's referencing, because the Y position is now 0, which is basically up there. And so kind of the way to get around that, you could add some position properties to the expressions to get them back to where they were. An easier way is just to kind of parent these to that eyebrow control. It's going to suck them down there to make the 0 position the actual center of the comp, and then I can just move my eyebrow control up here and it'll be easier to work with like that. So now when I want to control my eyebrows, I can actually just use these sliders to control them individually, do the rotation, things like that. So it'll make it all nice and neat within that controller. All right, so we're moving right along. Now we need to actually make our 3D head rig, again with another joystick. So what I want to do is I'm going to actually hide these 2 eyebrows because I don't need them right now, and anything else I don't actually need the mats to move either, or the base. So let's hide those as well. All right, and so now I want to grab the position properties of all these layers because they're all going to be moving. So just set a keyframe. So this is my origin keyframe. So now I need to move forward 1, and I'm going to move all of these to the right. And I might move a few of them, like the eyes and the eyebrows. Oops, the eyebrow control. Maybe over it a little bit just to get a little parallax effect going on. Maybe the mouth just a tad, something like that. Maybe that little highlight will go over a bit more. That looks good. Okay, then we go back to the next frame. I can hit that origin to center everything out. We'll go left, something like that. Maybe we'll do the same thing with the eyes and the eyebrows. Maybe the mouth goes over just a bit. Maybe this doesn't go over as far. This probably doesn't need to go that far. I mean, you can do whatever you want. Maybe this goes over a little bit further. That looks pretty good. All right, then we'll go center it out again. Now we need to go up like that. Maybe the eyes and the eyebrows go up just a little bit more. Maybe the mouth goes up just a tad. Finally, for our down, or center it out again, move everything down like that. Maybe that doesn't go down as far. Maybe this goes down just a bit further. Eyes and eyebrows go down just a bit. I think we're good to go. All right, so now we just select everything, create another joystick. We'll call this, let's just call this head, and hit OK. We get the other controller here. I can scale it down as I need to, and let's see how this works. So now you can see we have our fake 3D head rig, and it looks pretty convincing. We got some parallax going on with the eyebrows and the eyes and the mouth. Maybe the mouth goes down a little bit too far there, but I don't actually have to go down that far. And so you can see it just gives you a really flexible way to create, some really fine-tuned control over your facial rig, and it's much easier than having to keyframe everything manually because it's interpolating everything. Okay, so one last thing I want to do before we actually start animating is I want to give these eyes some blinking. So let's go into our eye right here, and I'm just gonna hide that. And I'm just gonna create a rectangle here and come forward a few frames, go to the scale, unlock the scale, and then just go forward a few frames. Blinks are pretty fast. We'll go down to 0 like that, and then back up to 100. Maybe back a frame. Put some easies on that. And so basically we want to use this as a just matte for the entire layer. So I want to go to mode, I think stencil alpha. And so you can see now it's closing the eye and blinking back up. And so that looks good. So I'm just going to copy these and kind of just randomly paste them through here. Maybe there's a couple blinks together like that. And that should be good. And let's just kind of play it back. That'll work. And let's see what that looks like. All right, so we got a blinking emoji. Great. Okay. So now let's start to animate this. I might change these color labels just to keep them separate. Okay. So let's start with the head. I'm just gonna be doing the position here, and let's just let's start from the center right here, and let's just start moving forward. Maybe he looks down over here, and then kind of back up a bit, swings over here. Hey, right there. Hey guys, down over here, and then let's have it kind of maybe loop here at the end, so it comes back. Can select all these, maybe ease them, and I might just put some curve on there. There we go. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, so it looks pretty good. And now we can go into our eye here, and we'll do the same thing. So position. So maybe we can offset this. Obviously, we don't have to do the same thing. So maybe he's looking a little shy there, and looking up, and then kind of looks over here. Like that. And you can obviously do whatever you want, so the sky's the limit. So it's kind of fun just to kind of play around with it and see how much expressiveness you can get out of your character. And then back to the beginning. Select all those, ease them. Maybe we'll put a little more easing on them. We can kind of see what it looks like. Looks pretty good. Okay. And then let's play around with the eyebrows. So we can set some keyframes in all these sliders, pull them up. And so maybe he starts with the eyebrows down here a little bit. And so the eyebrows go up. Maybe one goes up and it kind of rotates like that. And that one kind of does the same thing. They hold there for a bit. Evens out a bit. Maybe a little more skeptical over there. Almost angry. And then hey, I don't know what you're doing. Alright, then we'll move forward just a bit. Eyebrows maybe come back down. And you could also link these up with another expression, so you could do them both at the same time if you want to. But sometimes it's easier just to do them, one at a time, but it's really up to you. And then we'll even it out at the end. Select all of these, ease them, maybe just smooth out some of the motion, and they don't actually have to all go at the same time, so maybe we could just offset some of these animations a bit, just to give it a little more dynamism. Something like that. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Alright, so one last thing we can do is let's add a kind of master control to this. We'll give the head a little bit of rotation. So I'll just call this null master. And I want to link up all of these other things to that. So I want to make sure all the stuff they had shied is not shied anymore. So select all of these things right here, as well as the eyebrow control, and link those up to the master. And now this should rotate everything at the same time. That looks good. So we'll set a rotation keyframe, and so maybe, as he looks over that way, he kind of rotates that way, holds there for a bit, goes back up a bit, holds, goes really far over there, holds a bit more, be back a bit. Over there. Holds down. And then back to the beginning. Select all those. Ease, smooth it out. And let's see what happens. Yeah, that looks kind of fun. I mean, I might want to go in there and, offset some of the animations just a bit, but you can kind of get the idea of how fun this is to just play with, and you can get tons of expressiveness out of a very simple character without a whole lot of effort. And so that's basically creating a fun emoji character in After Effects with joysticks and sliders. And so hope you can see it's a really fun tool that you can play with, and there's just a ton of stuff you can do with it. So hope this is a helpful tutorial, or at least just a lot of fun, gives you some ideas of stuff you can do, and I will talk to you later.